All right. Okay, perfect. Okay, I'm just gonna. Okay. Hi, I'm Stephanie Johnson. I'm a pediatric speech language pathologist, and I have been practicing for 27 years. No, that's okay. Melissa asked me to present today to y'all to just give you a little bit more information about communication strategies for children with difficulties with speech and language development. A little bit of information about augmentative alternative communication, and then any questions and answers that you want from me. So here's our agenda for today. The importance of communication messages is kind of a big thing for me. I am a very big proponent of augmentative alternative communication for students, so that way everybody has a voice and they have a way to communicate and get their needs across. Communication Bill of Rights is a very big thing for me. Really good tool to use if you get denied with insurance with anything too. So the National Joint Committee on Communication has a Communication Bill of Rights that you can Google online, send to your insurance company if you're ever denied speech therapy services. Speech therapy, occupational therapy, all that kind of stuff. It'll help support that. So the power of communication forms for everybody. Can anybody kind of just throw out in the audience ways that you communicate on a daily basis with other people in your environment? Speech. Texting. Hand signals or gestures. Body language. Behavior. That's a big one. Now we've got FaceTime and Teams messages and email, writing, sign language, all of those different things. So we all communicate all day long with each other in multimodalities, right? Like we can all agree on that. That's a big thing that everybody does. Does anybody ever make you redo your communication mode or message in a different way if they understood you? Mm-mm. Do we do that a lot for our kids who have difficulty communicating? Do we try and force them into a way that we want them to communicate? Yeah, we do. So my big thing, and I'm a very big proponent and advocate of accepting a communication message. The only time you make somebody repeat a communication message is if you don't understand the message that they're trying to convey. And then us as parents and caregivers, my other big part of that is then we give them ways to communicate. So if that's that they have gestures or American Sign Language, or they use picture symbols, or they use objects, or they use communication boards, just like we do everything else that everybody listed earlier, we have so many different ways that we are allowed and are able to communicate with somebody. So we want to let those kids have that same opportunity to communicate in a way that is easiest for them, because that's going to be the least frustrating. You're going to see the least behaviors with that. And then we want them to feel comfortable communicating their message. So that's something very important to me as far as communication goes. And that's basically what this next slide is about, just accepting all communication messages, making sure that the person feels comfortable. The reason you're going to get behaviors is if somebody has a hard time communicating. If somebody's using augmentative communication and they're communicating with eye gaze or even with a low-tech communication board, that is one of the most fatiguing ways to communicate. And so not accepting a message or not giving them time to get that message across is going to give you behaviors and things like that. And so we want to minimize that. So strategies to enhance your child's communication. If your child is limited with verbal skills, if your child is just in the beginning stages of communication, if your child is on the autism spectrum, if your child has language delays, these are all strategies that can really support communication for your child across all environments. And so something that I really like to do is follow the child's lead. So whether that be a parent or a therapist, really taking on what the child is doing. Number one, it's showing what the child is interested in. So you're going to get better communication. You're going to get better connection with the child if you are doing something that they like and that they want to be involved in doing. So by doing that and following your child's lead, one of the things, and I know that this is hard as a parent to do all day long. You can't do this 24/7 when you're with your kid. But if you can find a block of time every day to do this, whether that be 10, 20, 30 minutes in your day where it's scheduled where you are doing this, you're going to connect with your kid on such a deeper level, and you're going to understand those nuances in their communication, especially if they're nonverbal kiddos. You're going to really be able to understand what they're trying to tell you and be able to interpret that better. I know that you guys do a really good job of that already if your kiddos are limited with their verbal skills, but any extra connection that you can make with them is going to give them an enhanced understanding, or you enhanced understanding of what they're trying to communicate. So be face to face with your kiddo, play with them on their level. So if they're on the floor, get on the floor. I'm over 50 years old. I'm always on the floor with my kids. So you guys can do it. Like, you can be on the floor with those kiddos. If that's their domain, if that's where they like to be, play on that floor, get on there with them. Imitate or copy what your kiddo is doing. So even if it's not the traditional way that you would play with a toy, let them play with the toy the way that they're playing with the toy. Whether that be throwing it up in the air or sliding it across something. If that's not what you would normally do with it, that's okay. That's how they're interested in that. And you trying to change that is going to take away from what they're trying to communicate to you or what they're trying to do with you. It lets them know that they're being seen and that you value them and what they're doing. And so I kind of mentioned this a little bit ago, but interpret. So interpret everything that they're doing. You're going to get it wrong at times, and that's okay. And they're going to let you know when you get it wrong if it's something that's really important to them. Sometimes they'll just blow it off, but other times they'll use behaviors, they'll use verbal cues, they'll tell you that you're wrong, or they'll just flat out say, no, that's not what I meant. But if your kiddo's pre-verbal, or even if they're just in that beginning stage of language, just interpret those gestures, the sounds, give them meaning and language. So what I do is I narrate everything I do in a speech therapy session, depending on the kid. But I will talk nonstop if I have to in a speech therapy session to give them language, to give them meaning, to give them the expected cues or the understanding of what I'm looking for when I'm communicating about what they're doing. So I'm going to take their important item and their important mode of play, and then I'm going to give that the language I would expect to have it back to me at some point in time. And the more that you do that and the repetition of that, your kids like to hear their favorite stories 800 times. I want that same story every single night. Same thing with play. So do that same play. Give it the same language over and over. It's boring to you after the 100th time, but to them it's meaningful. So if they are kind of doing something where they're reaching for the juice, say, oh, I want juice. If you're in the grocery store and you're putting different things in the cart, oh, this is an orange. It smells really good. It's the color orange. Just labeling all kinds of things that you're doing with language. You're adding the nouns, you're adding the verbs, you're adding the conjunction words, all those different things to give them that extra language. You can comment and provide meaningful comments in response to their language, but not necessarily correct their errors. So if they say something grammatically incorrect, like just telling you that the car is blue when it's really a red car, instead of saying, oh no, that's not a blue car, that's a red car, just say, oh, I see the red car. So you're not negating what they told you. You're still giving that meaningful back and forth communication with them, but you're not making them feel inferior because they didn't get it right, kind of thing. They're not performing for you right now. They're trying to play and communicate with you. And so that's what you want to keep enhancing and make them feel good about. Join the play, follow their lead, let them take direction, label and model language as you go. It's going to be a really good way to help enhance their communication skills. Everything I do with not everything, but most things that I do with pediatric patients is going to be play-based. You're going to get the most from them, unless I've got some kids who are just really strong and really like that rote learning type of thing. Then I'll kind of focus on those skills. I'll do the sit down at the table. We'll do more school type stuff. But normally play gets me the most bang for my buck as far as getting language from them understanding what I'm trying to communicate about. When I sit down and do table work with them, they're not as interested normally. So, but do what interests your kiddo. So other ways to enhance communication skills in a family environment is changing the way that you talk. So I know I just said I will narrate everything, and I will, but I'll pick those moments. I'm only going to do it during certain times. Then other times I'm going to say less, and I'm going to keep my sentences short. And so I'm changing what I'm doing in a therapy session all the time. These are things that come very natural for me, but I'm just giving you guys those tips and strategies to kind of think. And then as you start thinking about them, you'll learn when to do the narration and when to say less. Okay. You'll figure out what works for your kiddo and what works for your family. Especially when they're in that pre-verbal or that very early language stage, you want to keep your sentences short. So if your kiddo is maybe using one-word phrases, you would keep your phrases to 2 to 3 words. So just kind of staying one step ahead of where they're at. Because if you start making it too long, they're not going to get everything. And the processing starts to slow down. And again, these are just kind of in chunks of time that you're doing it. You can speak in your normal everyday language the rest of the time, but just give some specific times within your week or your day that you're doing this for the kiddos. It's going to enhance their communication greatly. So stress keywords, so words that you really want them to be noticing. So if you're talking about the color of the ball, and the color is what you really want to focus on because you're working on colors, then you'd say, oh, it's the blue ball. And you're just going to make that variation in your voice. I do a lot of sing-song when I'm doing speech therapy, just because that melodic intonation really helps kids, well, really anybody, grasp those concepts and hear kind of what's going on, especially when you're talking about articulation and phonological processing disorders being part of the component of it. So if it's not just language issues, but you also kind of have some speech sound development delay going on there, anything with that melodic intonation and that stress is going to help them learn how to produce those words and those sounds better. So those are helpful strategies. Going slow and saying your sentence slowly so that way your child understands every word in your sentence. Phonological processing, which is a speech sound disorder or articulation, is an oversimplification of adult speech patterns. And so you get initial consonant deletion, final consonant deletion, stress syllable deletion, regular syllable deletion, you get gliding, you get backing, you get fronting. And all of that is because we co-articulate everything we're doing. So as I'm saying these really long sentences, I'm not necessarily enunciating every sound in my word or in my sentence. Kids pick up on that. And then they oversimplify. And so that's why you get kids who leave off the end of words all the time. So that's a really easy one to kind of figure out what the kids are saying. And you as adults in their environment will normally pick up on that speech pattern and be able to interpret for them, for others. But when they have like initial consonant deletion, I don't know half the time what they're saying if they're saying it in a sentence. So if you slow down, you go slow, you emphasize your words, and you let them hear every word that you're saying and every sound that you're saying, they're going to pick up on that. So you're not directly teaching them that, you're not talking to them about that, but you're giving them that model. And so that's going to enhance their communication. Showing your child objects paired with gestures. So someone mentioned gestures and sign language. So pairing those objects with those gestures and sign language. If you're using other modalities of communication, like picture communication exchange system or augmentative alternative communication, use those pictures and those objects together along with the words. It really helps. Kiddos who are kind of at that lower level and aren't necessarily speaking, sometimes objects are the best place to start. So instead of going straight to pictures, objects are sometimes easier for kiddos who are nonverbal, working towards that verbality. Normally, I suggest not asking your kiddo a yes/no question in these activities because unless you're willing to accept the no answer. So if you're willing to accept the no, go for it. If you're not, and it's something that you're adamant that you're wanting them to do right now, don't ask them a yes/no question because you're not honoring their response then. So, and again, this is in your little set communication time. I'm not saying the rest of parenting that they can't hear no, or they can't, or no can't be the answer that they get back or that you accept, but, or that you don't accept it. But during this little communication time where you're trying to make that bonding experience and you're trying to enhance communication within the family environment, be willing to accept their no or don't ask a yes/no. Expand on what your child says. So if they say red car, you can say the red car goes fast, or I like the red car, or you like the red car. And label with a variety of words. So like the red car goes fast down the curvy road. Again, just staying one step ahead of your kiddo. So if your kiddo isn't speaking in sentences that long, then just pick a few words ahead of where they are, 1 to 2 words ahead of where they are. Make turn taking easy in social routines. So I know sometimes kiddos are either shy or they don't know what to do in a social routine. So kind of playing with that at home is a good place to start and to be able to teach them those skills for when they're with other kiddos. So using a toy or an object, following your child's lead, letting the child take turns placing the item somewhere in or on. So let's say, I do this with all kinds of stuff. I love my little animals that I have. And so kids love to put it on my head. So putting the animal on my head, and then I just label that the animal's on my head. And then I'll let it fall off my head. And they think that's hilarious. And then it's their turn. So they just saw me put the animal on my head. They saw how funny it was when it fell off of my head, and now it's their turn. And so they put the animal on their head, and we're doing back and forth turn taking like that. Again, with things that are very high interest to your kiddo. So they're going to want to do it and they're going to enjoy doing it, and just be silly with it, because the sillier and the more funny you are with it, the more that they're going to want to pay attention and keep that interaction going. And that's what you're looking for, is you want that social turn taking, that back and forth. A lot of times in school IEPs, especially when you're working on pragmatics, you're going to see turn taking is a huge IEP goal with kiddos in speech. And so you doing it at home and doing it in a fun way teaches them that back and forth, and you can build up that back and forth to really high numbers of turn taking when you're doing something really fun. And then it's you're giving them attention. That's what our kids like. So trying to do that with them. Label what you did. Wait for them to take the next turn. If they don't take the next turn, prompt them to the next turn. Put the item on their head. Put one on both of your heads at the same time. Do whatever you can to get them to get in that back and forth routine of that social exchange. Repeating the actions in the same simple words over and over again, as long as your kiddo is interested, is going to help them with the repetition. Same thing with wanting the same story every single night. Doing the same one over and over again is going to be fun for them. If it's something on the head, start changing out the objects of what you're putting on the head. If it's something that they really like, just continue to use different things so you can add different language in with it, but kind of keep the routine similar. And then try and expand on it as they grow and they get older, and or if they get bored of it. So adding something different. Cues. So kind of mentioned, if they are not taking the turn on their own, give them a verbal cue. Give them a nonverbal cue. So a verbal cue would be, put it on your head. Nonverbal cue, just showing them putting it on their head. Try not to tell them what to do. Instead, describe what's happening verbally, and then use your body to help cue and turn. So like if we're doing the head thing and I just put it on my head and it fell off of my head, I might put the object in my hand and give it to them, just for them to take it out of my hand and put it on their head, saying, hey, it's your turn, but here's a nonverbal cue for you, instead of me directly telling you, put it on your head. Augmentative alternative communication. That's kind of my passion. I love it. So you can vary anything from light tech, mid tech to high tech. Light tech would be pictures, objects, symbols, communication boards, PEX, which is picture communication exchange, alphabet boards, anything like that is light tech. Mid tech would be something like a GoTalk. GoTalk boards are battery operated. They're anywhere from 4 icon to, I think they even have up to like a 96 or something, some crazy number of buttons on there. Switches, buttons, Big Macs, anything that you can press that will verbally say something. Even Amazon has recordable buttons right now where you can record your own voice, and the kid can push it and say something, and you can put a picture icon on top of it. High tech would be those iPads or those dedicated communication devices, and those vary on vocabulary. Accessing AAC through a variety of methods. So there's direct access and there's indirect access. And so that's something I want you guys to be aware of, especially if your kiddos are more limited with their physical skills and things like that, that there are access methods out there. So don't let someone tell you, oh, well, they can't point and touch, so they can't do it. You can eye gaze, you can scan, you can do visual scanning, you can do scanning with auditory feedback, you can do partner assisted scanning. So there's all kinds of things out there indirectly that a child can do if they have motor difficulties going on too. So touching and pointing is kind of the most common one, especially we see the iPad where they're swiping and they're touching, they're really familiar with that. So they like that the best. If that's something that they can do to access it. Eye gaze is one that they use a lot. Head tracking. So there's little dots that can go on the head that can track the head movements and things like that, and then select the communication. Easiest access method is always touch pointing and having patience and understanding fatigue with other methods. And that's kind of the thing when it's not touch pointing, understanding that's going to take a little bit longer to learn the device because it's not as accurate, always getting the icon that you want. And it sometimes creates more frustration for the kiddo, especially if their communication partners aren't giving them time. Just some tips that I want to share with you real quick about the importance of anywhere from high to light technology is when you are getting an assessment for that, you want to make sure the person who is doing that assessment is doing something called feature matching. That means that they are looking at your kid specifically, and they are looking what your kid can do, and they're looking at what your kid can do, what your kid likes, what your kid doesn't like, and then they're making that recommendation of a device based on that. They're not making a recommendation on a device just because that's the device that they like and that's the vocabulary that they like. I have a favorite vocabulary for AAC. I don't give it to every kid because it's not the right one for every kid. But I have my preferences. It's not about me. The communication is about them. So you want to make sure whoever's evaluating them is doing that for your kiddo. Core vocabulary, that is the best vocabulary. There are 8 bazillion kinds of core vocabulary out there. I have my favorite core vocabulary app, but whatever you're doing with your kiddo, you want to do core vocabulary. And the reason that you want core vocabulary is because core vocabulary is what every human being on the face of the planet says every single day. It's between doctors and lawyers and teachers and kids and adults and teenagers. No matter who you are, that core vocabulary has been studied, and it is the vocabulary that we all use every single day. So we want to make sure that whatever vocabulary system is being used, it has core vocabulary in there. It's the most meaning vocabulary. There is a website out there called Project Core. There's all kinds of low-tech stuff on there with that. And there's a top 36 core words. And so depending on where your kiddo is functioning at, I really like a 60 location icon grid if I can with a kiddo. But if that's too much, I'm going to start with something lower. And I always want to start with the top 36 core words. And those top 36 core words are, again, everybody from kids to adults, from, lower socioeconomical status to the rich of the rich, what we all say all day long. So everybody across the board, everybody across different languages, it is the be all end all communication that's going to get you people understanding what you want to say. Teaching new words regularly and implicitly. So there's been a lot of work done recently about core vocabulary and teaching vocabulary with AAC devices, whether that be low or high tech, and just kind of letting them learn it on their own. That doesn't really necessarily work. That's a good strategy for some parts of it. But then for the other part, you want to make sure that you're explicitly teaching those words. And you want to teach them in a variety of contexts. So in the school environment, in the home environment, when we're brushing our teeth, when we're washing the dishes, when we're playing with our friends, those words are used in a different variety of ways. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that. Kind of talked a little bit earlier about staying one step ahead of your kiddo as far as the amount of language that you give them. So if when they're using a communication device, if they're at the 1-word level, you want to be at the 2 or 3-word level. So you want to know that device better than your kid. You want to know that device better, well, not necessarily than their teacher, but just as good as their teacher, okay? Just as good as the speech language pathologist that's using that device. And I know that's intimidating sometimes if you're using a communication device, but there is all kinds of information out there to help support you as parents for that. The easiest way I can tell you to do it is to just pick it up and use it. Easiest way to learn something new, and they're really not that bad once you get the hang of it. Communication partners, my big thing is that if you are going to use augmentative communication with a kiddo, that you have somebody in every single environment that is using that device with that kid. Okay, you have that device. If it goes to school with them and sits in their backpack all day long, that's not doing them any good. Okay, you've got to get the school on board. You have to get a paraprofessional on board. At home, you have to be using it. Employers, their siblings to use it with them, so that way they're having other more age-appropriate conversations with it too. So that's kind of my big caveat, is if you're going to use some kind of communication device, make sure somebody in every environment is using it with them. What questions do you all have for me?
Hi. Thank you. I thought that was very interesting. My daughter is further in her speech language development. But I've got a question in regards to, we do a lot of the practice, the role playing, the back and forth at home, and then we get out into a public situation, and she goes into her scripted, her 5 safe sentences, and she'll just go kind of into a repetitive through her questions. How would you suggest that we encourage more spontaneous conversation?
How old is she?
11.
That's partially the age. Speaking from a mom of 3 kiddos who are all very different, but yeah, kind of the age, especially with new people, that's kind of age appropriate for them. Starting with their safe sentences is a really good place to start. And then, do you have other children at home?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do they work on that with you?
Does she play? Does
Yeah.
their child help conversation as well? Yes, we play games.
Okay.
We call them the question games, the conversation games.
Okay. When you are getting ready to go somewhere specific and you know that there's going to be other communication partners for her, would she be open to you talking about, okay, you can use, when we go out, I want to see you use one new communication strategy and try and pick a specific person if you know that's going to be there. Is that something that she could do?
I think she could, yeah.
Yeah, I would start with that. And I would talk to her about it and say, hey, you're doing such a really good job communicating with people when we go out. I want to see you get even better at it. Can you do one new sentence? And even though it still might be a scripted sentence that you guys practice at home, it's a new sentence or question out there in the world with everybody else. Okay. And try and pick a safe person to do that with if you know who it is.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
A question about older teens, and I've asked other SLPs the same question, but what's your opinion of, does a teenager or young adult ever graduate speech, and when do you feel that that's a thing?
Yes, so I have a lot of patients who have graduated speech, and I do work with a lot of kiddos on the autism spectrum and all different varieties of developmental delays and or disorders, and I graduate kids all the time. And it depends on the kid. So if we have plateaued, even though we might not be scoring where I want somebody to score on a test, if we have plateaued, then I will dismiss a kid from therapy, having a conversation with the parents, having a conversation with the kid. If the kid doesn't want to come to therapy and they're in their teens, I don't normally have them do therapy anymore because that internal motivation isn't there. Now, certain kids, they do that on purpose just to get out of it, doing certain things or hard things, task avoidance and things like that. And so I kind of really look at that over a variety of sessions to see, are we doing task avoidance? Are we plateaued? Do we not want to do this? Where is the motivation level? Can we try and motivate another way? If none of those things are working, then sometimes sometimes I call it graduating. Sometimes I call it we're taking a break from speech for a while. It just kind of depends on the kiddo. I very much tailor whatever I'm doing to the kid, the family, and the school, and then whatever environment I'm in. If I'm in a clinical setting, if I'm in a school setting, it's going to be tailored to what fits everybody, not just me.
Right here, sorry. Hey, I have just it's kind of a random question, but just to try to understand what we should try to accomplish going forward. Our son's really motivated by like the goofy play that you talk about, where I mean he's into a lot of different characters, and if we can't get him to be compliant, one of the effective techniques that we use is doing voices. So I'll be Hagrid from Harry Potter or something like that, and he'll do it for Hagrid, but not for me. Is there a path forward from that, or is that an effective communication style that he's dictating that it's like, okay, this is acceptable and we can just use this? He's going to be 15 in November, this month. Yeah.
He's quite delayed.
Yeah, he's pretty delayed though.
So if that works for your family, I say keep doing it. When he's in other environments, that might not always happen for him. And so it might be compliance, getting him to do certain things might be a little bit harder, but I'm all for doing what works and what motivates people for communication. And no matter where, when, how old, who you are, I want to meet you at your level, is what I want to do. And so I would say keep doing it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. I have a question. My daughter is 24, and she does have autism, and she has white Sutton. Just lately, I noticed she's doing that echolalia a lot. Okay, echolalia. I don't know why she does it, but it's very frustrating to me that I can't finish my question before she's answering me using my words. I don't think she even understands what I'm going to ask. Should I somehow just be patient, or should I bring that to her attention?
That's a mode of processing. Okay. So if someone is giving you immediate echolalia or delayed echolalia, they are using that to process the information. So I would give them patience. I know it's really hard when you get interrupted and they don't even know, like you said, that she has no idea necessarily what you're going to ask. I get that from my 13-year-old daughter sometimes now. It's not what I was going to say or ask you, but just having patience with that. It's really hard to tell someone not to do the repetition because, first of all, us as human beings, naturally, when you don't hear the word not, you don't hear the word no, you don't hear the word not, all you hear is everything you just said after that, which is you're telling them to do exactly what you don't want them to do. So sometimes maybe replacing it with something else. I think with her, what I would do, since she's cutting you off mid-sentence, is I would literally just kind of stop, let her do her thing, and then move forward with the rest of whatever your sentence is.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So my daughter Lacey, she will, like, if something exciting's coming up, like bowling, for instance, she went to bowling on Wednesday, and I made the mistake of telling her like 2 days in advance, and she like bowling Owen, bowling Andre, like, and like I have to repeat it, or she will like get in my face and like make me say it back to her. I think it's her way of knowing that I'm listening or hearing her, and but it's like 15, 20 times, and it like wears me down. I'm like, Lacey, I've repeated it 15 times, like we're moving on. And is there strategies or ways to prevent that, or?
Oh, that is kind of a typical kid thing. I know she's a little bit older now. And if you're talking about typically developing kiddos, we've outgrown that stage by now for this. But this for her is something that's really meaningful, that's really exciting. And she just is overstimulated by the thought process of this coming up. So trying to get that to go away is going to be really hard. And I think that's going to make it more frustrating for you because it's not going to happen easily. I think what you said, you made the mistake of doing it a couple of days early and now looking back. So it's just a learning experience, you know? Yeah, exactly. And there's depending on the kid, there's always that fine line there. Like I had one kid where, you know, I had to make sure that they knew everything in advance and a good time in advance, especially if the routine was changing. I have one of my other kiddos, I do need to let them know in advance, but not too much because then the anxiety sets in. So you just kind of balancing that with your own kiddo and figuring out and making the mistakes as a parent as we all make every single day, and then just kind of going from there. But I think you've got to honor the fact that she's excited about it and that she wants to talk to you about it, because there was a time that she didn't always want to talk about.
That's exactly what I told Josh and Mandy. Like, it's frustrating and I get very impatient, but I remember when I wasn't sure if she would ever be able to speak. So I'm like, I have to keep that in the forefront of my mind as well.
Parents text message me, you made him talk. Can you make him stop? No, no, I can't. Sorry.
Anybody else?
Hi, thank you so much for being here. My daughter uses an AAC device, but she'll get into patterns of repetition with that as well. And I was just wondering if you have any strategies.
Sometimes it's stimming. Sometimes it's learning a new word. So kind of looking to see what that is. And then certain devices, you can turn that off and or make it very delayed so it's no longer meaningful. So if we're doing it to stim and just hitting it over and over again just to hear the word, there's ways that you can delay that word so it doesn't automatically repeat itself over and over again. Then it loses the effectiveness on them. So you kind of have to figure out what the function of it is. If she's doing it because she's learning a new word, that's how kids develop language. They babble with words before they start using words. So if she's learning it and learning what it means and what it understands, or the location of where it is on the device, there's multiple things of learning when you're talking about an AAC device, not just the vocabulary and what it means. She could be babbling with it. If she's babbling with it, I would not extinguish that. I would let her do it.
Okay. Yeah.
She's great at learning the pathways, like it's, yes. Yeah.
And
School, they added in this whole process about, I want to tell a joke and this is part one and this is part, and she'll go through it, but she'll just keep going through it and keep going through. So I just.
It's babbling. We all did it.
I'll take it. Anybody else? Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
For your knowledge and sharing this with our community.
No
We appreciate
problem.
it.